In other words, people with schizophrenia have an excessive amount of dopamine. And this reflects a level of disorganized thinking. Hi, this is Jim Brillon. Welcome to our YouTube channel where we talk about all things mental health. As always, if the videos are helpful to you, I encourage you to like and subscribe, sign up for notifications so you can find out when we're putting out more material. The topic today is, what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a disorder that I think some people may use the term not really understanding what it means, and it's a specific type of what is thought of as a thought disorder. Schizophrenia is something that it has an early stage and a more advanced stage. Sometimes they refer to their earlier stage as a prodromal stage, and this is when symptoms start to appear sometimes in the teen years, and generally the disorder becomes full-blown around the college years, anywhere between 20 and 30 years old. As a rule, it's different for everybody, but as a rule, that's when it starts to become pronounced. And there are a number of different symptoms that people have to be experiencing for more than 2 or more of these symptoms for more than 6 months. And they include what are called positive symptoms and negative symptoms. What that means is a positive symptom is something that starts to happen, and a negative symptom is something that starts to not happen any longer, such as losing a positive mood, losing an ability to focus and concentrate. The positive symptoms are more like the addition of hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations are when people start responding to internal stimuli or hearing voices that aren't really there. Delusions are basically they're fixed beliefs that people maintain despite evidence that they're not real. And at the core of schizophrenia is something that's called aberrant salience. What that means is salience is a term that refers to things that are important to us, and we generally put more focus on ideas, topics, things that are more important to us, more salient to us. With the onset of schizophrenia, what happens is that everything becomes salient, and there's no ability to filter out that listening to my name being called over here is more important than hearing a buzz of a bee over here. And somebody with schizophrenia can't filter out that stimulus. And what happens is experiencing schizophrenia is sort of like having every sound has the same volume, every word, every thought has the same level of meaning, and it becomes really unbearable for people to filter this out. We believe that what's causing this is the level of dopamine that's released into the system. In other words, people with schizophrenia have an excessive amount of dopamine as opposed to a lower amount of dopamine, which is what happens in people who have Parkinson's. So what happens is when all of your senses are alive, and often in the early stages of schizophrenia, people they might actually enjoy the symptoms because they feel like, my senses have come alive. I've developed greater awareness, noticed things I've never noticed before. But then as those things start to increase, they become personal, directed at them, and very intrusive. In other words, somebody might see a trash can and start to think that the trash can is sending messages to them. These are what are called delusions of reference, that everything is happening in reference to me. The TV show that I'm watching, the characters are talking about me. And this reflects a level of disorganized thinking where there's this information overload and people are constantly responding to it. If you've ever seen somebody who suffers with schizophrenia who's not treated, they will be responding to things that aren't there and talking to people that aren't there and constantly responding to ever-flooding stimuli. What happens with the delusions is that they can be, there can be different types of delusions. There can be persecutory delusions, where people believe that people are out to get them. Maybe they're being followed. They can have grandiose delusions, where they might think that they're God or Jesus or the President of the United States. They might have delusions of erotomania, meaning that they believe that people are in love with them when they're not, and that everybody's in love with them. They might have nihilistic delusions, meaning that they feel like they're disappearing, like they're not actually here, like they're invisible. Or somatic delusions. This is when people might feel like there are bugs crawling all over their skin, or there are insects inside of their body, or their internal organs are dying. And as you can imagine, these can be really, really distressing and discomforting, you know, delusions that can make people feel like they're crazy. They can also experience abnormal motor behavior, like catatonia, meaning that they're just like frozen or in a stupor, or they go mute, and often have diminished emotional expression. So their affect is just kind of flat. And that can also be part of the anhedonia, or lack of pleasure, that comes with depression, which is often a part of that. Depression is often one of the negative symptoms. So as I say, it can start in the teen years and progress throughout the college years. And the more these disturbances increase, the more troubling that they are. And this is the point, hopefully, where people can seek help, which in almost every case of schizophrenia means that they have to be medicated. This is one situation where medications are absolutely crucial. And people who are on appropriate medications and maybe getting some appropriate psychotherapy as well, they can actually do really, really well. They can lead productive, even happy lives, but they need to remain on the medications. One of the problems with that is that someone with schizophrenia might start taking medications, the hallucinations, the delusions, the bizarre thoughts go away, and then they think, I don't need to be on this medication, and they stop taking it. And within a short time, they're in the street raving, you know, to outside appearances. That's when it can become very dangerous, where if police encounter somebody like this, they can act out violently and get in trouble or even injured or killed. What schizophrenia is not, it's not a split personality, and people with schizophrenia are not inherently violent. There are differences that happen in the brain involving these negative symptoms, positive symptoms, cognitive symptoms, and there's irregularities with the dopamine levels and also glutamate. I think this is probably what's causing some of the negative and cognitive symptoms. As far as the causes, there's lots of ideas as far as what causes this and why it happens in some people and doesn't happen in others. It seems to be connected to early disruptions in neural development, and there are definitely genetic factors. Schizophrenia is something that impacts about 2% of the population, and there can also be issues like substance-induced psychosis, especially nowadays that people that indulge in cannabis a lot. Some strains of cannabis are really, really high in THC, and there are an increasing number of people who show up in emergency rooms because they have cannabis-induced psychosis. With most of those people, once they're not taking the cannabis any longer, the psychosis goes away, but not always. And there's a cause and effect issue that comes up where somebody might initially have substance-induced psychosis that turns into something that looks like schizophrenia that becomes a more permanent situation. There's still scientific debate on whether the psychosis caused the schizophrenia, or did it trigger the schizophrenia that was sort of latent. So there's lots of ways of understanding this, but basically we think of it in terms of what they call a diathesis stress model, meaning that somebody can have a genetic marker for something like schizophrenia or depression or anxiety or obesity, but those genes don't get expressed until there's a certain level of stress in the environment that activates them and turns them on. There's also a lot of evidence that suggests that people that have adverse early childhood experiences like abuse and neglect can be more susceptible to developing schizophrenia, and especially if they've experienced something called hypoxia, meaning that they've had times when their brain was not getting sufficient oxygen. So, as I say, people that are being treated for schizophrenia can actually lead very happy, successful lives. And if you're interested in learning more, there's some great TED Talks by one woman named Ellen Sachs, who graduated from Yale and Vanderbilt and has schizophrenia. She's also been under treatment, and in 2013 she was nominated to be the head of the Health and Human Services Department in the United States. There's a movie that I think people are very familiar with called A Beautiful Mind, about a mathematician named John Nash, who is a paranoid schizophrenic, but also received the Nobel Prize. If people aren't treated, people with schizophrenia often struggle in life and have financial troubles and can't hold down a job and need to be taken care of, and go through cycles of mental health issues that turn into legal issues that turn into run-ins with the police, and it can become a very dangerous situation, especially if somebody is homeless. So that's kind of an overview of what schizophrenia is, and I'd love to hear your comments and questions if you want to put something in the comment box. As I say, like and subscribe if these are helpful, and look forward to sharing more information with you later.